Today we are going to review multiplication of large numbers. So what is multiplication? One way I would encourage you to think of multiplication is to think of it as groups of. So taking that word times and replacing it with groups of. So 3 times 5, how we normally read that problem, actually means 3 groups of 5. And if we think of 3 groups of 5, if there's 5 in each group and there's 3 groups, that would give us 15. So applying that to larger numbers, if the problem is 135 times 12, that means there's 135 groups of 12, which is going to be a much bigger answer than 15 because 1, we have a lot more groups, and 2, our groups are bigger. We're going to solve this problem in a little bit, so I'm not going to solve it right here. We do know that we can use that commutative property to flip numbers around. So instead of 3 times 5, it could be 5 times 3. But typically when we're really thinking about and including that groups of, we want to do it left to right. So the first number is how many groups there are, and the second number is how many are in each group. Understanding these groups of can help you solve word problems as well. If you encounter a word problem that is working with groups and you have this many groups and there's that many in a group, that's multiplication. If it's you have this many people and this many groups, how many are in each group, that's going to be a division problem. But hopefully this helps you understand kind of what does that multiplication mean. Sometimes we can use pictures as well. So if I draw out this 3 times 5, we can draw it out using a rectangle. So if I include a rectangle here, and we have three groups of 5, so then this way is going to have 5. How many squares do we have in there? Well, we'd count them, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Now let's talk about the ways that we can write multiplication. I'm going to show you 3 ways today. There's actually a 4th way as well, but these are the 3 ways when you're using numbers. So the first way is just going to be our standard 3 times 5 written with that x for multiplication. As we start to learn algebra, we are going to stop using that x for multiplication because algebra uses variables and letters, and is that an x or is it a multiplication? That gets confusing. So the first way we change it to adapt for that is we're actually just going to use a dot instead of an x. And this is the new way that many students feel comfortable with, and it's just kind of written the same way, just a dot instead of an x. And then the last way we're going to look at today is we're going to use parentheses. So anytime there's a number right outside those parentheses, there's no space there, no symbol in between them, that is multiplication. And that's going to take 3 and it's going to multiply everything inside the parentheses. In this case is just 5. There's another way when we're using variables and we can write the variables next to each other, but since we haven't gotten to algebra yet, I'm not going to talk about that one. Okay, are you ready to solve some problems? So I've got intentionally 3 different problems up here, and I put these different problems up here because I want to do a 3-digit number times a 1-digit number, a 2-digit number times a 3-digit number, and a 3-digit times a 3-digit. So we're going to get a little bit more difficult as we go from left to right. So let's do 265 times 8 first. I'm going to have you guys solve this problem, and then you can check and see how I did. To solve this problem, I would do 265 on the top times 8 on the bottom. And we always line numbers up over here on the right side. We don't need to add zeros in here to kind of even the numbers out. This is just the typical way we write it. And then I'm going to take this 8 and I'm going to multiply it to each of the numbers of the other number. So first I'm going to do 8 times 5, which is 40. I'm going to bring down the 0, and then I carry the 4. And the reason I have to carry that 4 is because for this next one, 8 times 6, well, technically that's not 6, it's actually 60. So we have to include these place values, and by carrying that 4 up above, I'm going to get the 4 with the other proper place values. So 8 times 6 is 48, but then I add the 4 up above that I carried, so that is 52. Bring down the 2, carry that 5, 8 times 2 is 16, plus 5 is 21, and I don't have any more to multiply, so that is my final answer, 2,120. Let's take a look at our next problem, see if you can do this one. This time we're going to do 12 times 135. All right, maybe stop the video now and solve it, and let's see how you do. So the first thing I would do is I'm actually going to choose to write 135 on the top, 12 on the bottom. I'm allowed to switch these around because of that commutative property, but it just helps because it gives me kind of less to multiply on the bottom, I guess. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. So I'd start off and I would do 2 times 5 is 10, bring down the 0, carry the 1. 2 times 3 is 6, plus 1 is 7. 2 times 1 is 2. Now, when I move over to do the 1, so I'm done with the 2, I've kind of moving over, I need to start with a 0. Okay, and we're using that as our placeholder because we're not technically multiplying by 1, we're multiplying by 10. So I do 1 times 5 is 5, 1 times 3 is 3, 1 times 1 is 1, and then my last step here is going to be to add these numbers together. So 0 plus 0 is 0, 7 plus 5 is 12, carry my 1, 2 plus 3 is 5, plus 1 is 6, and then bring down this 1 here. My answer to this problem is 1,620. Now, I want to compare the two problems we've done so far and talk about how they differ from each other. So what you'll notice is that in this first problem, we had one line of work and we got our answer. In the second problem, we actually had 2 lines of work to get our answer. And we get that based on how many numbers we're multiplying by. So we had a 1 digit in the first problem and a 2 digit in the second problem. So that's one way that you can always check your work and make sure you've done everything you need to do. You should have as many lines to add as you do numbers you're multiplying by. And it's always going to be that second number, not the top number. But this is one way just for students to check and make sure they've done all the work. Because now we're going to go to this next problem, and it's a 3-digit times a 3-digit. So I'm going to help you out by writing this one down first, and I'm just going to write it kind of in the way it is. So it's going to be 482 times 516. Now, before we even start multiplying, how many numbers or how many lines of numbers should we have for this problem? Hopefully you said 3. So I'm going to have you stop the video now, solve this problem, and then come back and check your answer. So if I'm solving this problem, I would start off with multiplying the 6 times all the numbers. So 6 times 2 is 12, carry the 1. 6 times 8 is 48, plus 1 is 49, carry the 4. 6 times 4 is 24, plus 4 is 28. All right, so I'm done with the 6. Now I'm moving over a place value, which means I start with a placeholder, starting with that 0. 1 times 2 is 2, 1 times 8 is 8, 1 times 4 is 4. Now I have to go over another place value. So since I'm skipping over 2 numbers, I need 2 zeros or 2 place values. This is very important. Okay, however many numbers that you are going to skip over is how many placeholders we put in there. So I would start with 5 times 2 is 10. I'm going to carry the 1. 5 times 8 is 40, plus 1 is 41. And then 5 times 4 is 20, plus 4 is 24. Now I need to add up all my numbers, making sure that everything is in kind of the right column with each other. So as I go to add these up, 2 plus 0 is 2. 9 plus 2 plus 0 is 11. Carry my 1. 8 plus 8 is 16. Plus 1 is 17. Carry my 1. 2 plus 4 is 6. Plus 1 is 7. Plus 1 is 8. And then the next 2 numbers don't have anything to add with. So if I put in my commas, my final answer is 248,712, which is a big number, but we multiplied 2 big numbers. Okay, make sure if you're checking through your work, do you have 3 lines here which comes from having 3 numbers in our multiplier. Okay, so hopefully this helped review multiplication and kind of what to do. If you have any questions, please let me know. But let's move on to some practice.